Okay, some very late Latin with Bede, starting at book 1-2. Verum, it's a bit of a butter on all Thames, so it'd be now. This same Britain, from 1.1, till the time of Julius Caesar, to the Romans, was inaccessible or hadn't been accessed, and was incognita, unknown. Who from the condita of the city, from the founding of the city, whatever the hell that is, a bunch of numbers, but before the time of the incarnation of Christ, I'm guessing, in the year 60 AD. Okay, that'd be founding of the city time and AD time. Blah blah blah. Functus, must be Julius Caesar. He's performed his role as a consul in this social gradu, this ranking of passing through the ranks of Latin society. He did his consulship with a guy called Lucius Bibulus, and while against the races, the gentes of the Germans and Gauls, that's supposed to be the Rhine, is it? It looks like it's been spelled a bit weird. Only is these two races are derived. They're kept apart, or they're split by the river Rhine. Okay, so that's what's going on. So it looks like a long sentence. Caesar conducted a bellum, a war as far as the Morianus people, from where it is very close to Britain, and it's a very brief transitus, a very short journey from wherever the hell this is, someplace in Europe. And with Navi buses, ships, honoraris, don't think I've seen it with a H, but it's not unusual. Honoraris means they're heavily burdened, probably with all the provisions and things you need. And actuaris, okay, so these are fast-moving ships. These are ablative absolutes, so with heavy with provisions and soldiers in these fast-moving ships, I guess thinking there were people inside it, around 80 ships were prepared in this crossing over to Britain. When there was the first, the Acerba Pugna, very ferocious battle, they become fatigued from this. Then they were corruptus. They were grabbed by some adverse weather. A great part of the fleet, a plurimum classis partem, and not a small numerum of soldiers, not a small amount of soldiers. And here's the thing of medieval Latin, they leave the A out of Paeni for future reference. But almost all of the knights, did they have horses on the ships? But they had men who rode horses, they dispirited them, they lost. So it's not a very good omen, I guess. He regressed into Gaul, went back, he dismissed his legions into their winter camp, and Sexagintas, they've sort of crossed Roman numerals with the literal spelling. He ordered to be done ships utrisque of both types. I guess that's these two types. Commodi. So that's part of the ordering there. Ones that are convenient or suitable. Quibus with these, again, into Britain at the beginning of spring. Vere is spring. Transvectus, so it's just counting him going over. We see cum exercite, so he's going over with his army, while himself was purgating, continuing on towards the enemy, in with the accusative, with his army. His ships were standing, they were standing in anchor. They were corrupted, they were grabbed again by another tempest, another storm, and were either con Liza into se, they were battered about amongst themselves, or they were in Lisa on the sand, they were stuck in the sand, and dissolutus, they fell apart, or crashed apart. Okay, so from these, 40 perished, if you can count ships as perishing. The rest, with great great difficulty, were repaired, reparatus haunted. The equitus of Caesar, the knights of Caesar, in the first congress, in the first clash of battle, were evicted. They were beaten by the Britons. And there, Labienus, the tribune, was a Cyzicest. He was killed. Secundo prolio. In the second battle, with a great discrimine, usually a danger or a crisis or turning point, suorum means of his men, the Victos Britannos, the defeated Britons, turned in flight. Then he profectus, he set out to the Flumen, the Thames, whatever that is in Latin. On the ulterior bank of this, on the further side of this, which would be the River Thames, Temensum, looks like Bede with the leader Casabelluncu, I think that's a V in English, Casabelluncu in Latin. An immense multitude of hostiums were sitting, considerated on this river bank, on the further side. And the bank of this river, and again, Pene means Paini, and almost all of it underwater was a varum, which is the shallows, or a ford, as we call it in English, constructed or instructed, or whatever you want to do, with very sharp stakes under the water, constructed or something or do. Of which, of these stakes, the vestiges of these stakes, ibidem in the same place, as far as today, are still visible. And by inspecting, they are seen. That each of them, to the middle of a human femur, I'd say thigh high, are thick, and they are circumfused with lead, immobitable, they're not moving, and they are infixed in the profundum of the river, in the depth of the river, which, when by the Romans comprehended or seen, and vitiratum est, and avoided, the barbarian nomatives, not bearing the impetus of the legions, not bearing the force of the legions, they abdiderate themselves, they hid themselves in the silvers, in the woods, from where, with frequent eruptions, gravely and often they lacerated, cut up the Romanos, the Romans. Interior. Meanwhile, the very strong civitas, city or area of these people, the Trinovatums, with their leader, Andronicus, who was in the Gallic Wars written by Caesar, having given 40 hostages, opsides, he surrendered himself to Caesar, which followed this example. Other cities, complores, many of them, and they came into the Foedus Romanorum, into some sort of treaty. His demonstratibus, so the city taken became a bit of a demonstration or example. Caesar, the town of this guy we mentioned earlier, Casabellum, or V in English, which is situated, the oppidum in Neuter, is situated into two marshes, two paludes. It is Munitum, the city. It's fortified in super over it with a obtentu, a covering of woods, silvarum. It is confertissimum, the superlative is very well packed with all types of things. And at last, Caesar capited it, he took it with a grave pugna, with a serious battle. Exean. Then Caesar reversed from Britain into Gaul. Postquem, after he sent his legions into their winter camp, by sudden tumults of war, unique on all sides, he was circumventus, he was surrounded, and conflictatus est, and there was a fight.